Welcome to Mommispace, the podcast for moms of all stages. My name is Aubrey Coots, and this podcast was created to give moms a voice to share their experiences and to share that there is not just one way to be a mom. This is a place where you can learn to love the woman inside the mother. This is Aubrey Coots, and today I'm here with my friend Becca Harrison. And I met Becca through our church, Redeemer, a few years ago when we started attending. So almost 5 years ago, I think, is when I had met her originally. And just got connected to her. And she's a fellow adoptive mom, and her and her husband adopted domestically. So I thought she'd be a cool person to talk to, just to hear more about what that process looks like and just kind of what their adoption journey has looked like so far. So Becca, welcome to Mommispace.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd love if you could start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your family and the story of your journey into motherhood.
Okay. Well, I've been married to my husband, Mike, for 14 years, and we have one 6-year-old girl named Elsie. And I stay home with her and I homeschool her. So then my days are pretty much spent reading books and going on nature walks and like dealing with the 6-year-olds. So my journey into motherhood. Okay. So I was pretty young when we got married. I was only 19. And so we waited about 5 years before we decided we wanted to get pregnant. And we started trying, and it just didn't happen for a little while. We went to the doctor and they're like, oh no, you have to wait a year, before we can do anything about this. So that we had a year of trying, which it doesn't sound very long now, but in the midst of it was so long, it was stressful and painful and probably the worst year of our marriage at that point. Just in regards to like fighting and just the stress of it. It was a lot. And then we finally hit the year mark and we were able to start testing and seeing like why this wasn't working. And that wasn't particularly fun either. They're stressful and painful, some of them, and you're waiting on results still. It's just a lot of waiting and stress. And it didn't have any answers. They diagnosed me with unexplained infertility, and that was that. And so the next step was fertility drugs, which, I mean, at that point we were physically exhausted, emotionally, just all of that. And I mean, I know fertility drugs and hormone stuff, it can exacerbate all that and make it worse. And we didn't really want to go that direction. We weren't really comfortable with IVF. And so we just decided at that point, like, we'll look into adoption. So like we knew we wanted to be parents. We didn't really care at that point if the child was biologically related to us. It wasn't important at that point. So we got an agency recommendation and we started the process. We sent in our first application in August, and because I wasn't working at that time and I finally had like control over something in the process, I just worked to make it happen as fast as possible, like as soon as we can get everything done. So we were finished by December with our home study. I mean, and you have to be foster certified for that process because of, California law.
Yeah.
You have like the 6 months of being technically a foster parent before it's finalized. And so it was a lot. But we finished by December. And there was just like this ton of paperwork and hoops. And I think two of the hardest things in that process, they're really interesting, but they were tough for us, were you have to create a family profile. And I know that sounds not that difficult. You're like, you just put a bunch of pictures and describe yourself and talk about your hobbies and your family. And that sounds not that hard, but because in infant domestic adoption, the birth parents choose you, like they get a stack of profiles to choose from.
Yeah.
And so you're making this profile and you're thinking, okay, what do we hide? What do we tell about ourselves? What are they going to hate? Are they going to hate Mike's tattoos? Are they going to think our hobbies are lame? I don't know.
Right.
So it was weirdly stressful to do that. You don't know who's going to like you or not. And so that was really hard for us for some reason. And then the second part came at the end of that process. The second part that was difficult. They give you a questionnaire and they say, it just has everything on it. And it says you have to say what you're comfortable or not comfortable with in regards to like the birth mother's family history, drug use, medical history, mental illnesses, like disease history of like everything, race, like anything you could have an opinion on, like you have to say what you're okay with and not. Um, and that was hard. We had to sit down and we had to like pray through it. And I mean, we were Googling things like, what are the odds that things are genetic, or what's the, like using certain drugs, what's that going to do to a baby? You know, you have to
Yeah.
make all those decisions, and what you're comfortable with. And it was difficult because in pregnancy you can't fully choose the health of your baby, you know. um, and here we're having mostly a lot of choice in it in that way. And yeah, so we did that, and then we filled it out and we sat down with our caseworker, and she told us that the typical waiting period, they quote, to most couples is about 4 years long,
Wow.
which is insane. It's so long. But because we were a lot more open on that questionnaire, and I didn't think we were that open to a lot of
Mm.
things, but I guess we were. Um, and our caseworker said a lot of people want a baby that looks just like them and is in perfect health and comes from like the most ideal situation. And it's just not the reality of that,
Right.
you know. But she quoted us 2 years. And that was great. It was exciting, but we're like, okay, 2 years, it's still long.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then this is in December. And at the end of January, we get a phone call saying there's a birth mom. She's due in 2 weeks. And this is her situation. Can we show your profile to her? And we prayed about it and we're like, yes, show her profile. And so they told us how it works as if you're chosen, you'll get a call back saying you were chosen. Yay, you know, you're matched. This is great. And if you don't hear back from them, then you weren't chosen. So you just wait and wait and wait and you don't hear anything. So 2 weeks
Great.
passed. Yeah, it was stressful. So
Gosh.
I was just praying and
Yeah.
praying, and I told Mike, I'm like, I know this is it. This is us. This is all, she's our kid. And which, you know, he's like, you don't know that, like, you know, but we were really excited and I was all in. And then 2 weeks passed, we didn't hear anything. And so we're like,
Mm.
okay, I guess we're not chosen. And then about 10 days later, we got a call. And I remember it because we were sitting outside drinking smoothies at Juice It Up, just enjoying it. It was like a holiday, a Monday off. And we got a call on that Monday, and the caseworker said, you were chosen, but we just couldn't tell you for whatever reason till this moment. She was born Saturday, and you can pick her up tomorrow. So
Oh
we
my
went from like,
gosh.
yeah, we went from like 0 to pick your baby up tomorrow, you know.
Wow.
Um, which it was amazing. We had one day, we went out and bought everything you could need, because for your home study, you just need like a car seat and something for them to sleep in. So we had to pack
Yeah.
them, you know. So we had to go buy like clothes and diapers and everything you could need. And we had to pick out a name in a day, one name. We're like, oh my
Gosh.
gosh, haven't seen her yet. I don't know. But it was amazing. So then the next day we got to go pick her up. It's
Wow.
wonderful. Yeah.
What was that like the day that you went to pick her up? What were some of the things that you felt?
I was terrified. And I was actually sick. I had gone to the doctor in the morning. I had bronchitis. And
Oh my
so I had
gosh.
a face mask on. So I didn't breathe. I'm like terrified of getting this newborn, like super sick. Yeah, it was amazing, but I was so nervous. We had to feed her with a little bottle, and I made Mike do it because I was not ready. Like, I held her, but I was so nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was good. It was just surprise. I feel like we're just in shock, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's interesting, like obviously your story is very different from mine, but just the similarities of like in a day for a
Yeah.
mom and like your whole world changes
Yes.
when you get a call and it's like, okay, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. Like just how, yeah, your whole world has shifted like in moments, which is like super
Yeah.
crazy and unique, but like a cool piece of being an adoptive mom. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
How did you and Mike decide which way of adoption was best for your family?
We decided on domestic infant because we knew we wanted to start with a newborn for our first kid. I'm not particularly maternal and I'm not a big kid person, so I wasn't ready to start with anybody older. I needed the like gradual beginning from a baby,
Yeah.
you know. We weren't really drawn to international adoption, and at that time, and we didn't really feel prepared for just the heartbreak and uncertainty that can come with like fostering, and so that seemed like the only other option at that time for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And I know it's cool just like to hear why different families, choose different things because people do have different reasons. Even like talking to my cousin about like from the time I think she said she was like 10 years old or 12 years old, she knew she wanted to adopt from China.
Amazing.
Like, and now she's, 30, I think, or 31,
Wow.
and they met their baby girl yesterday. So it's like it's crazy just to see how, like
Yeah.
different things work for different families. And I didn't even realize, I was like looking at the World Adoption Day website, that there's 19 million
Wow.
children in the world that need homes. And it's like I'm sure that number is just growing every day with, new babies being born, and um just how our world goes. But
Right.
yeah, I think that was just really like, I don't know, like a big reality check even for me.
Yeah.
And just like,
Staggering number.
yeah, like that is such a huge number. It's like, man, there's so many children that need homes. So yeah, whether that's domestic infant or fostering, um, it's funny how like even that has shifted for me, not fostering to adopt, but doing foster care. And
Right.
if adoption like happens, um, or international adoption, just like I feel like being able to give these babies homes is like such a cool thing to be a part of. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know you said you're like, I wanted to start with an infant because I feel like I'm not very maternal. I'm just kind of curious, like what did you feel like that attachment process was like for you? Even like Mike, you make the first bottle, like I can't do it. Like,
Yeah.
how do you feel like that, I guess? Because I mean, I see you now and you're an amazing mom to Elsie.
Oh,
So
thanks.
like, how do you feel like that progressed, or that you were able to like attach to her just as time has gone on?
Yeah. I don't know that my innate maternal instinct has changed all that much. Like I'm still not like, oh,
Yeah.
kids, babies, children in general.
Yeah.
Sounds horrible.
No, that's
Um,
fine.
but when I held her, I was like, she's ours. I don't know. It's just holding this like a fragile little child, and I don't know. I loved her, and it just grew. I don't even know. Like I caught on. It's like, okay, these are and in the early days you're just surviving, you're just like bottles and diapers and sleep and rocking and that's it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and so it's lovely and that's what we
And
did.
exhausting.
Yeah, and exhausting, but
Yeah.
it grew from there.
Yeah. That's good.
I don't know.
Do you think that you guys would ever want to adopt again in the future?
Possibly. Um I mean, never say never. At this point we're not sure we even want more kids, but that's not a for sure set in stone thing. We're just old and tired already, and it sounds exhausting. But
Yeah.
I know if we did, we would lean more towards fostering or um, fostering to adopt. Do
Well, I
that.
know a guy if you need more resources on that.
Good to know. Thanks. Well, and that's a huge thing because when we first adopted, there wasn't that many people around us doing that yet.
Yeah.
And so now we're surrounded by people that have done it and
Yeah.
or doing it in the process or just in some form in that system,
Yeah.
and we have those examples and the support system, and so we would for sure probably lean that way. Yeah.
What do you feel like for you have been some challenges in the adoption process or in having an adopted child, and how have you worked through that or overcome that?
One of my biggest ones has been talking to Elsie about it. Things I thought I was prepared for, I
Hmm.
wasn't fully prepared for. So first it was figuring out how to tell her that she's adopted. because we got her at 3 days old, and she could almost pass for being biologically related. Not if you look close, like she's tan and beautiful and tall, and Mike and I are short and white, and like if you look really close. But in general, people are surprised to learn that she was adopted. So it didn't come up in like an obvious way. And in training, they said, like, make it a part of their story early on, make it natural. Don't just sit them down and surprise them with it at, an older age, in some dramatic way. So I was starting to stress out because she's getting older and we weren't talking about it. I think she was maybe 4 or 5, I don't know. And she just didn't know. And so and they said, like, oh, they'll just ask questions naturally. Like, oh, they'll see a pregnant woman and they'll say, oh, was I in your belly, mommy? Or whatever.
Right.
And she wasn't asking those things.
Yeah.
And so I was freaking out a little bit. Like, what do I say? How do I do this?
Yeah.
So what I did with her was I was snuggling with her at bedtime one time, and I decided to like tell her a story. And so I started this fairy tale story about a man and a woman who were married and they wanted a baby really bad, and they prayed to God, and God provided them with one. And I mean, it was gentle, but it was there was more detail, and it was specific enough that she kind of picked up that it was about our family in a cute way. So she liked that. And she would ask for it a lot, like at bedtime. So I would give her the story again, but with a little more detail, until I was giving her more and more detail. And so she's finally understanding it. And then one day I had to put the word adoption in it. I hadn't used it yet, but I was watching, she was watching Mr. Rogers, and it was an episode about adoption. And Mr. Rogers says, do you know anyone who's adopted? And she's like, no, she's answering the TV. And I'm sitting there like, oh no. Yeah. So then I had to put adoption in that story. And then, so now like that opened up doorways to talk more straightforward about, what it was. But that's how she just wasn't asking, and I needed her to start getting that idea. Like,
yeah.
So
now does she understand that she was adopted?
Yes. She knows. And, we've even talked about birth parents and stuff like that. And obviously that's just a continuing conversation.
Totally.
You add more and she understands more, but she understands a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe the second thing, which when I say it feels really dumb, but honestly, and I think we've talked about this before at church, I felt a little bit like a fake adoptive mother. It was like everyone I know has just these dramatic stories, or it's like foster care, or it's just like these really emotional big things. And it just wasn't a part of our life. Like I said, we got her, other than when we first got her, like that's a fun story. And then it was just not talked about, not part of our life, because she was so little. And
right.
And so, it just felt, I don't know, it just felt like not a big part of my life. So like I was invited to the adoption conference that you guys all went to this year. And I'm like, is that really for me? Am I really like, am I enough of an adoptive mother to be a part of that?
Yeah.
Which is dumb. Like, yes, I am. And
right.
And as she gets older, I'm realizing more and more that even if it doesn't feel like a big part of my story, it's going to be a big part of her story. Like people think about adoptions as just this beautiful, amazing thing, and it is. But there's tragedy and there's trauma all the time, even for a baby who was adopted at 3 days old. It's a part of her story, and now she understands more. It's going to shape who she is and how she thinks about herself, and she's going to probably grieve and wonder about what ifs, and right. And so I don't know that I'm always going to have great answers for her, but I'm just praying about it all the time for like wisdom and what to say and how to like walk her through that. So that's
thanks
hard.
for sharing that. And I think like you being like, I feel like I'm a fake adoptive mom because I haven't been through all this like drama and, whatever. That's, you have, I guess, like, maybe if it's not even now or it hasn't been yet, it's like, I'm sure that there's still so many points that throughout her kids' lives we'll be able to connect on, like,
Yeah, for sure.
and different things that we'll still experience with them or just in our families
Yeah,
that biological families maybe wouldn't experience.
right.
But that is a great point. And even for you to be like, I feel like, I don't know, like, should I even go to a conference like that? Is it worth it? This is my little plug for next year. You should go because it is really good.
I'm sure
I
I
feel
will.
like
I'm
it's
planning on
it's
it
good
now.
just for any mom, but
Yeah,
it is cool to be in a place with other moms that have experienced growing their family the same ways that we have.
right.
Yeah, just different things to connect on for sure. But yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I'm sure there's someone listening that probably can connect to that, that's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, I know other people that have had these really hard international adoption situations or have fostered to adopt and have whatever their case may be. But um yeah, I think that just sharing, like, yeah, I don't know, I feel like a piece of that too, just as women, that's hard because then it's like I don't really know where I fit,
right.
like that, like, identity piece of like, okay, so I don't fully fit in with like the hardcore adoptive
Yeah. Yes.
but I don't fit in completely with biological only moms. So
Mhm.
um that's a real thing, that's a real challenge, like working through that. And
Yeah.
I think, like, something that was actually said at that conference that was really helpful to me was just like, regardless of what your story has looked like in becoming a mom and in adoption, like, we're all moms and we're all figuring it out together. And that kind of makes it like a level playing field, which is like a good reminder to hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
What do you feel like have been some of the greatest joys in adoption or in being an adoptive mom?
Um, Other than the joy of getting a baby, a small joy, and this is dumb, maybe not dumb, but this is a small joy for me, was not having to recover from labor or go through labor, and not having to breastfeed, which I know is beautiful